In this video, we are going to talk about pacing and the ability to skip questions. Now, first off, I'm going to tell you something that is mind-blowing, at least from the GRE standpoint. Here it is. Every question is worth the same number of points. Wow. Why is that so mind-blowing? What's going on here with this statement? Well, I think almost everybody who takes this test assumes that the hard questions are worth more points. The medium questions are worth slightly fewer points than that. And of course, the easy questions are worth the least number of points. It's intuitive. It must be the case, but it isn't. Again, every question is worth the same number of points. So what does that actually mean in terms of pacing? Well, do the questions that you find easy, because the easy questions are worth the same number of points as the hard questions. So why waste your time with a really difficult question? 2 minutes have gone by and you're really no closer to the answer than when you started, versus using those 2 minutes to solve easy questions. And so I like to think of this as a tree. This is again, please pardon my artwork. Okay, that's tree-ish enough. Here are fruits on the tree. There's some fruits way up here. And maybe you've heard of this expression before, the low-hanging fruit. Assume that every one of these fruits is an orange or an apple. And that fruit is the exact same. That is, this apple is no different from this apple, is no different from this apple. If you wanted to pick 3 apples, where would you pick them from? Well, if you're down here, and you're not a massive giraffe, it makes sense that you would go for the low-hanging fruit, the easy fruit. The GRE is the same way. Identify those questions that are easy and go to those questions. Another way of saying it is do the easy test, the test that for you is easy. Now, this comes down to the next important point is, yes, you can skip questions. And the reason that this is so mind-blowing is the old GRE, well, you weren't allowed to skip a question. You had to answer it before moving on. And that was very stressful. It's something that the new GRE creators wanted to change. And so what you have now is the ability to scroll, to go from question to question to find the easy test. Mind you, I wouldn't scroll all the time just looking for a question that is easy, then skipping the medium ones. But I would definitely use the scroll feature to avoid the difficult questions. Remember, on the medium section for either math or verbal, that is the first section you receive for either math or verbal, will have some difficult questions on it. It will have a bunch of medium questions as well as some easy questions. Find the easy questions and the medium questions by using the easy to use scroll feature. And that way, get as many points as you can in as little time as possible or before the time runs out. Now, to figure out what is an easy test for you, it's good to have an idea of which type of questions are harder, which ones are time drainers, etc. Now, first off, this test is section adaptive. I went over this in an earlier video, and essentially what this is saying is the test does not become harder within the section. That is, question 5 is not more difficult than question 3, which is more difficult than question 1, etc. Rather, difficulty within a section is random, but depending how you do within the section determines your next section, the section you get afterwards. And that's why the new GRE is a section adaptive test. However, there is one section, and that is the quantitative comparison section on the math, quantitative section, and again, as the quantitative comparison, in which the questions tend to get more difficult as you go up in number. You will either have a section that has quantitative comparison questions from 1 to 7, or another section will have 1 to 8, meaning that 6 and 7, 7, 8 tend to be more difficult than 1 and 2. And that way, from a pacing standpoint, you know that, okay, it's a good idea to do first 4 or 5 questions, same here, and then maybe skip the harder ones, especially if you are pressed for time on the math section. Now, if you are very strong at math, then you may just want to go through each question as long as you don't get flustered and hit the wall as far as try to find the answer goes. You may want to just go all the way up to 7 and continue going. But again, if you're not that confident in math, It's very important to know that the harder questions in quantitative comparison, again, they start the math section, 1 through 7, 1 through 8, tend to be a little bit more difficult. So don't get flustered, go to problem solving, and again, look for the questions that are easy to medium. Now, in terms of question types and the amount of time they take, let's talk about the time-consuming ones. First off, text completions. And you may balk. Say, wait a second, no, I don't agree with this, because that one blank text completion is easy, and I agree. But what about the 2 blank, or even the dreaded 3 blank text completions? Those are the ones that are going to take you a long time. So instead of sitting there trying to dissect this sentence with 4 commas and a semicolon, skip it. Scroll, go on to something else. Choose another question. And again, when I say scroll, maybe this sounds confusing to you. I encourage you to take a mock test as soon as you can, either through GRE or through the GRE Creators ETS, or through Magoosh. We'll talk about that in a second. But again, going back to here, and time-consuming, 3 blank text completions, and some of the 2 blank text completions can take up a lot of your time. Then there's reading comprehension. Not all passages, but there are a couple of long ones. In fact, there's one very long one and one long one. Both of those have only 4 questions after them. So skip those. Come to them at the end. And then there are paragraph argument questions. Again, not all of these are difficult, and you maybe want to give a question a shot. Read it. But if you're struggling and you're thinking to yourself, wow, this is actually a long paragraph, they're asking me to do a lot and understand a lot, and wow, it's really confusing. Again, don't think, I'm not good at this. Think, I have encountered a difficult problem, and now I will skip this and come back to it if I have time. Now, I mentioned a second ago about these practice tests. It's one thing to hear me talk about the scroll feature, how different questions take more time and you have to kind of find your own strategy so you can find the easy test or the low-hanging fruit. But nothing can really prepare you the way that taking actual mock tests can. These actual practice tests. You'll pick up on the scroll feature really easily. And as far as, again, finding the questions that are easy for you, you'll develop a sense of that. So we have here Power Prep 2. This is the one from ETS that I mentioned a second ago. These are the writers of the test, Educational Testing Service. They write the GRE. And they have here these 2 Power Prep 2 tests. And the reason why it's called Power Prep 2 is Power Prep 1 was for the old GRE. So again, Power Prep 2 has 2 tests, and you can get those with the official guide. And they come on a little CD. And then, of course, there's also the Magoosh mock tests. And so you can create a bunch of mock tests using the Magoosh questions themselves, and this will give you the exact feel of taking the GRE in terms of the scrolling, even in terms of the calculator. It's like sitting there and taking the real test. So here you have it. These are the important strategies you need to know in order to pace so that you don't run out of time and that you go for the easy and medium questions first.